is on that. There is on that. Internal. There will be a little wobble.
Good morning. Just before we get started, I'm just going to give a few housekeeping notices. The hotel is not anticipating any fire drills this week, and so if you do hear a fire alarm, please do consider it an actual emergency, and the assembly point is in the driveway of the hotel or by exiting to the marina side and along next to the tennis courts. If we can have up the agenda, I'm just going to run through some of the points that are being covered this week, as there's been a few things that have been added to the agenda. So to accommodate the governor's remarks this morning, we will be running the networking break at 10:40 for 50 minutes, and then returning for the keynotes from the cathodes keynotes and the graphite and anodes panels. So this room will be split in two, with the panel discussions being held on this side and the keynotes stage being on this side. Then at 1 p.m. we'll have the networking lunch, which is being held when you exit onto the marina side and walk along towards the pool. And then there is a marquee there where lunch will be served. And we will also be having a workshop on understanding phosphoric acid market dynamics, which will be held in the Marina Vista, where you pass the registration desk up towards the hotel lobby, and straight ahead at the far end of that corridor is the Marina Vista, where that workshop will be held. At 2:15, a new addition to the agenda today, we will have a special address from Ambassador Sarah Bianchi, who is part of the Executive Office of the President, the Government of the United States of America, who will be providing a little bit more details on the announcement yesterday regarding the visit of the Indonesian President and some of the MOUs that have been developed there. And then again, after that message, we will then go into keynotes and panel discussions in the ballrooms, and then later that afternoon we'll have again from 4:30 p.m. sessions will restart in both the ballrooms, but also we will have two workshops, one hosted by Worley and one by Wave International, both being held in the Marina Vista, before having our networking reception in the marquee again outside this evening. I'll go into more detail over the next 2 days of the agenda later on throughout the event, but just to highlight that on Thursday we will have a number of benchmark hosted workshops, so please do come to get a bit more information on benchmark and speak to our market experts. A quick note as well, there's been hundreds and thousands even of meeting requests flying around in the build-up to this event. So we do encourage you to continue doing that through the networking app. If you're looking to find your meetings, in the app you can find the table numbers, and those table numbers are in the Marina Vista. And for questions throughout the event, there is a Q&A tab in the networking app as well, and you will also be able to see QR codes with link to where you can put in your questions to our speakers. But with that, I'll hand over to Simon to open this year's event. Thank you.
That's one. Yeah, short and sweet. Welcome to Benchmark Minerals Week, or Benchmark Week 2023. This is, for us, the center point of the critical minerals industry and the technologies that are driving the energy transition forward. Of course, we are the lithium-ion battery space, but actually we're growing into different technologies, rare earth permanent magnets, solar supply chain, other battery technologies, and it's going to be a really excellent few days. No more words from me. I want to introduce the man that has made this talk today, as very special talks today happen, Tyler Dinwoodie.
Thank you very much, Simon. Thank you and welcome, everybody. As the 38th governor of the great state of California, which is the world's 5th largest economy in its own right, Governor Schwarzenegger worked tirelessly to lay the foundation to rapidly advance clean, sustainable energy initiatives, and to ensure that the energy transition would also be a major economic driver. For his visionary leadership while governor of the state of California in spearheading a comprehensive, future-focused energy strategy, setting the example for a low-carbon energy policies around the world, and for his subsequent and continuing efforts through the USC Schwarzenegger Institute and the Schwarzenegger Climate Initiative to advance and to champion numerous sustainable energy and environmental initiatives. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Arnold Schwarzenegger. I would like to ask Dr. Stanley Whittingham, the Nobel Laureate, Nobel Prize winner in chemistry in 2019 for the invention of the lithium-ion battery, to join me on stage to present the award to Governor Schwarzenegger on behalf of Benchmark. Thank you, Dr. Whittingham.
Thank you for everything you've done in the country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me just say quickly a few words. Just fold it up again, okay? Thank you. Anyway, thank you very much for this great honor for getting this award. Obviously, when you are, a bodybuilding champion, you get a lot of medals, you get a lot of trophies, and you get a lot of awards. But this one is without any doubt the most recent. I thought I'd throw this joke in. It's something that Milton Berle taught me. But in any case, I do appreciate it. You do get a lot of awards, and I've had hundreds of awards for what I've done for the fitness movement and for bodybuilding and for a healthy body. And this is an award that is what I was trying to do and did for a healthy earth. Because to me, this is the most important thing, to make our earth healthy, because it's inexcusable when you go to those COP events and environmental events where the whole world gets together and you hear every single year another 7 million people died because of pollution. And I said to myself, we can do better than that. And so it is great to be here with a room of warriors. That's the way I look at you. You all have the interest in making this a healthy earth. You all are warriors and battle it out there every day to make this a better world. So I'm very, very proud of you, and I'm very happy because of that to get this award from you. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, Arnold, it's an absolute honor to have you receive our inaugural Lifetime Achievement Award at Benchmark. I want to kind of take this conversation first back 20 years, back in time, up to the beginning of the century now, right? And you became Governor of California in quite surprising, unusual, and special circumstances. But straight away you put greenhouse gases right in the center of your agenda. You targeted them. Does the world today disappoint you? from where we were then?
Well, first of all, Simon, let me just say that when we met a year ago and talked about this lithium industry that is developing here in California, we talked about the permitting and all of those kind of things. You asked me, and you all asked me to kind of, if I can continue supporting you. And I said, yes, of course. And then you asked me to come here to this event. And I think that you were concerned that I will ask you to pay. So of course, the old trick is that the way you get a celebrity to speak at your event is two ways. One is you pay them, the other one is you give them an award. But Simon went beyond even that. He said, and I'm going to buy 1,500 of your books, be useful. So he ran around town, and Los Angeles is a big town. And he bought up all of the books that were in the bookstores. And I know that because I go to the bookstores every day to check out where they're positioned, and then assign a few quickly and put it online, you know, to keep the name out there alive and all this, you know, like in one of the chapters says, sell, sell, sell. I'm an expert in that. And so I know whenever I went to a bookstore lately, they said, it's out, we're out. Some crazy guy came in and says, give me all the books. So there was Simon. And so anyway, so this is what's going on between these two guys here. They went around town, and so you didn't have to do all of that. I would have come anyway because I love this subject. I love renewable energy. I love what we are doing here with lithium and how we're going to be the future. And lithium is, of course, the new oil, as far as I'm concerned. So anyway, so it is really nice. And thank you for the award anyway. Okay, so thank you very much. But to get back to your question, I was very fortunate that when I became governor, that Bobby Kennedy Jr. Called me just before I became governor, and he said to me, and he's a Democrat, now he's independent, but I mean, he was a Democrat. And he said to me, he says, I want you to do well as governor. And I think in California, you're gonna do well if you do also some interesting stuff environmentally. Now, I know you don't know much about it. I'm an expert in it, he said, but I'm gonna get you a guy by the name of Terry Tamminen to come in and help you with your administration. And that's what he did. He introduced me to this guy, Terry Tamminen, and he really educated me. And then he became the head of the EPA when I became governor. And he and I, we ran this whole thing, and we started creating policy after policy. And there's one thing that you will know when you read the book, Be Useful, that I always believe in the big vision. I hate small things. So when I became governor, well, first of all, I should go a step back and say, when I got into bodybuilding, I did not want to be Mr. Austria or Mr. Europe. I was shooting for being the greatest bodybuilder of all time. So that was my vision, and I did not know how far I'm gonna go with that, but I will find out, but let's shoot for the sky. And the same was in acting. When I got into acting, I didn't want to be another actor, I wanted to be a leading man. In action movies, I want to be another Clint Eastwood or Charles Bronson. And people said I'm crazy and it would never happen and all this, but I heard that before, so I didn't pay much attention. So the same thing was again when I became governor, I had a big, big vision. And I said to myself, what is right now the renewable energy? Well, we have 19%. And I think, Governor, we should really make a goal like 25%. I said, why wouldn't I make a goal for 25%? Don't we have the power to create 50% of renewables in a short period of time? And they said, well, we could, but I said, forget the but. We could, you said, we could. Okay, good, so now let's go for that. That should be our goal. I said, and what should be our goal now for reducing greenhouse gases, pollution? Because that's what really this whole thing is about. So they said, well, we could maybe make 10% or something. I said, well, didn't England and European countries just set a goal for reducing it by 25%? They said, yeah. So I said, well, let's do 25%. Let's reduce pollution by 25% in the next 10 years. And so those are the kind of goals we did. And then we did the goal of 1 million solar roofs. And so they again said, this is crazy, will never happen. And then we got together with the PUC and we came up with incentives for people. And all of a sudden, you know, we created the 1 million solar roof initiative and the green building initiative and all of that. So the list went on and on and on. And the bottom line was that we were very successful because we have something that Ronald Reagan created, which is the Air Resources Board. So when the politicians say this is our goal, like the rest of the world, they always say this is our goal, but then they never do it. 70% of the countries did not follow through with their promises from the Paris Accord. They made promises, but 70% didn't do it. Why not? Because they don't have an Air Resources Board. So the politicians do what they normally do, promises, 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 but no delivery. So we have an Air Resources Board that Ronald Reagan created. He was smart enough to do that. So when the politicians say this is our goal, the Air Resources Board then has to follow through with that goal. And we worked with them very closely, and they did it. And they came in 2 years early. 2020 was our goal. 2018, they did the 50% of renewables. Now we literally have 60% of clean energy in California. Now think about if the rest of the country in America would have 60% of clean energy. It would be so much better because now we have 40%, we have 20% renewables, and we have 20% nuclear. So if they would put up the nuclear to 40% and the renewables to 40%, we would have 80% clean energy in America. It's a very simple thing to do. The Democrats will be happy with that, and the Republicans will be happy with that. The only problem is we have no leadership in Washington. There's no leadership, there's no strength there that says, here's the vision. There's no big vision. There's not even a big vision right now in California. I mean, they're fighting each other all the time about the renewable energy, about having solar. Then they say, well, you know, solar is not, we have the 1 million solar roofs now, but now we need the power companies. They now say that we need now the 1 million batteries. So let's ease off on the incentives for the solar, and let's give more incentives for the batteries. Well, there's no vision yet. There's no program yet that moves us forward with the batteries. So this is in limbo, this whole thing now. And if you ask anyone up there in Sacramento, there is no clear vision of where we will be 10 years from now when it comes to this subject of reducing pollution and having a clean energy future. And that's a problem. So it goes back and forth all the time, and it puts you in uncertainty. And so you can see already with the permitting process, I mean, this is pitiful. When you think about it, by 2024, we should be already had our lithium, 25,000 tons of lithium. But no, we have to wait another year. Because, not because of you guys, because of the politicians. Because they're dragging their feet. Permitting process. Permitting for what? We're doing something renewable that cleans the world. How many more permits do you need for that? It's total nonsense. It's the same thing why we have a housing crisis in California, why we have a homeless crisis in California, because of the permitting. They make it impossible to build an apartment building. They make it impossible to build a home. It takes 4 years. 4 years for what? We know that we have a shortage, so this is leadership, and it's vision, and that's why I said earlier, I always had a big vision. You know, to me, I have a big vision for California. I always had a big vision for that. I had a big vision for America, because I think the things that we're talking about are totally doable. I've talked to the congressional leaders, to the Republicans in Washington just a few months ago. I went right after that to the White House, and I talked to them. They both were in agreement that we could go and create nuclear power and more renewable power, and that there's a deal there. I haven't heard them talking to each other yet about it. Or maybe we have so much time. Yeah, it doesn't matter. We have so much time. Let another few million people die in the world. So that's the way they think. You see what I'm saying? So this is why I think it is so important what you do. This lithium, oh man, I see a great future there, I can tell you. We're onto something really big. We're gonna have enough lithium for batteries for the whole world. I mean, it's gonna be wonderful. I love it. Yeah. Yes.
What's it like back in the early 2000s, shifting people's thinking, shifting the culture like you did in California? Because this is the big problem we've got at the moment. The battery industry has scaled so much. But even 5 years ago, even 3 years ago, a lot of people are saying, not in my lifetime. It's not going to be really big. It's going to be, but now we're in the middle of this scaling process, changing people's thinking, shifting culture. Was it easy for you because you're Arnold Schwarzenegger and you walked into politics and they just kind of went, all right, we'll do what you say? Or is it quite a long process?
No, it was, I mean, first of all, they were a little bit confused about me, right? Because I'm not the typical politician. So I'm a little off with everything. You know, but it's in a good way off, you know. So I went to Sacramento as a Republican. So when they heard me talk about renewable energy, they said, what the hell is he talking about? He's a Republican. Why is he talking about renewable energy? So they didn't get that I would be interested in that subject, in reducing pollution, having a renewable energy, having batteries, having electric cars, and all of that stuff. They were not used to coming from a Republican. Then I had to made it clear to them, I said that I was voted to be the governor of California, not the governor of the Republican Californians, but of all Californians. I had Democrats vote for me, I had independents vote for me, I had Republicans vote for me, and all that. So my commitment was to California. And so it was natural that California was one of those states that was always interested in a clean environment and protecting our environment and making it better all the time. So therefore, I, being a servant of the people, had to go in that direction. If I like it or not, I happen to like it. I happen to really love the idea that California has the power to move things forward in a very aggressive way and then be the model for the rest of the United States. And that's the world, again, I come from in bodybuilding. When I was a bodybuilding champion, I didn't just think about, okay, how can I lift more weights, but I was thinking about, okay, how can I now with my fame kind of lift the whole fitness movement? And so I started promoting fitness and bodybuilding for other people and for other countries and so on, because I didn't see it just as something for myself. And the same thing was with this. It was not just for California. I said to myself, we could be such a great model for the rest of the United States and then for the rest of the world. And so to me, I was a big believer in that. And so I had to kind of change the people's opinion about, even though I'm a Republican, but I'm into that. And I want to work with Democrats together and with Republicans to create some of those, you know, the million solar roof and to the reduction of greenhouse gases by 25% and all of the stuff, getting more renewables, getting it up to 50% and all that stuff. So they got used to that idea. And then we also pushing for, you know, battery operated cars, electric cars, and all of that. The other thing I think that was very important was that we changed the messaging, because the environmentalists have this crazy idea that this word climate change is going to go and have a great impact. We found out that every time we used climate change to the people, they didn't kind of respond because they didn't quite know what that meant. And so I kept saying, I said, let's go back to what Ronald Reagan talked about. You know, Nancy and I, we hate the pollution. Nancy cries sometimes because of the pollution. I said, let's go back to the word pollution. I said, because people understand it. And so I started switching the messaging. I said, forget about the climate change. I said, I believe in climate change. I believe it will happen if we don't take care of the pollution. I said, but the majority of people don't know what that is. So let's go and start talking about reducing pollution and what health effect it has, pollution. That we have to let the people know there's people dying because of pollution, and there's people getting cancer because of pollution, and that kids are getting asthma. So when we fought the oil companies and they were about to win, we had some unusual help from the American Lung Association. And they sent us a video, a little spot for television, that showed how the kids are getting affected with the asthma and how dangerous that is and what effect it has health-wise and on the parents and all that stuff. And that commercial was so effective that even though the power companies were ahead 60-40 and wanted to derail all of our environmental work in 2000, I think it was 8 or 2010. I think it was 2010. They wanted to get rid of all of our environmental work and said, let's put it on deep freeze until the economy comes back and all that stuff. We changed that number from 60-40 to 40-60. All of a sudden, we were ahead 60 points, and they were behind at 40 points, just because of this one commercial. And we won, and they were not able, this was Proposition 23, I remember, what they were trying to do is take out all the environmental progress we made, so they lost that. So it was the first time that the oil companies and the coal companies, these were out-of-state oil and coal companies, not even Chevron locally or anything like that. They were trying to derail us. They lost. And they put millions and millions of dollars into this campaign. So it proved to us once and for all that the messaging has to be right. See, the oil companies were talking about they're taking away your jobs and you're gonna lose money, the economy is gonna go down if you go into that green direction. And we had no message. We talk about renewables and about, climate change. And it just didn't work. But as soon as we had this commercial out there, how it affects the kids and asthma and how people are getting sick of pollution and stuff, it had an effect because it all of a sudden meant something to people and they changed their mind. And so this is why we have to go statewide, nationwide, and worldwide with that message. But the environmentalists can't get off that word climate. They can't get off it. And as long as they use that word climate, as a matter of fact, the president, when he gives a State of the Union address, he would just say, let me say a little bit about climate. And I said, how can you go and now ruin these next precious minutes the whole world is watching with calling it climate, rather than let me talk a little bit about the danger of pollution. And we have to terminate pollution. We have to say, hasta la vista, baby, to greenhouse gases. So I get frustrated when I hear those guys on the highest level miscommunicating. You see, it's very important that, and we learn this. I remember, again, it goes back to fitness and to bodybuilding. As long as we called it bodybuilding, we couldn't make any progress for the general public to do exercise and for all the athletes to exercise. But as soon as we called it weight resistance training, yeah, I get that. I want to do weight resistance training. Because all of a sudden it didn't mean bodybuilding, the guy that stands on stage with oiled up and flexes, because that's the competitive side of bodybuilding. But there's people that want to do bodybuilding just to get fit, to get stronger, to feel healthy, or to get better in their sports. So look at now what has happened. A revolution in weight resistance training, which is bodybuilding. They're building the body. Every football player is doing it now. You have guys now doing one-arm chin-ups, football players, while they're reading a book. Yeah. I mean, from the Dodgers, right? This guy is like an animal, and he squats with 500 pounds like nothing. He weighs 185. These are monsters, these guys. They're all training with weights, and this is why football has become so powerful and so much more popular. And basketball players are training with weights, and golfers are playing with weights, and wrestlers and UFC fighters. Everyone is lifting weights now. Back in the 70s, Bruce Jenner, now Caitlyn Jenner, not to be wrong, but Bruce Jenner was a friend of mine, always we trained together. He was one of the first ones in the 70s to work out with weights. That's why he won the decathlon championship. So you have to do it. But I mean, it's communication. It's communication, communication, communication. And that's how we all have to go and sell what we are trying to do and accomplish with our industry. Because this is an industry where there's money in it, but there's health in it. And that's the ultimate goal. You know, it's like being a doctor. It's like, yeah, there's money in it, but there is health in it. There's saving people's lives. That's what we are doing. And so I think the future is going to be great. Eventually, we're going to get all of this lithium out of the ground, and we're going to sell it, and we're going to have batteries for the rest of the world. So it's, I'm looking forward. And I tell you this again, you have to give me another award. If you have another event, I'm there, because I'm going to help you push this, because I see it all the way to the end. You know, that's my vision. And you know, I'm one of those guys that does not, when I get voted in, I clock in. And when my term is over, I clock out. That's what most politicians do. I can't do that, because my vision is still running. I cannot disconnect it. So I mean, everything was like that. You know, like I started bodybuilding 60 years ago, and I'm still doing it today. So it never stops. Even when I went through the movie industry and governor, I trained every day. You know, and my promotion for it always continues. And so all of this stuff, I never disconnect things or stop things or kind of like replace it with something else. It's always going to be, and that's why when I finished with the governorship, I started the USC Schwarzenegger Institute, because USC said, okay, look, if you want to continue your work, we're going to make it possible. You have an institute at our university. We want to create an institute there, and that's exactly what I did. And now we continue working with homeless issues, with the infrastructure issues, with the environmental issues, healthcare issues, you know, all of those kind of immigration issues, all of those kind of issues that I started when I was governor and I felt very passionate about. I continued that work, and so I cannot let go. So I never clocked out like the typical politician. I continue on with my work.
To get the messaging, to change the messaging for the future, do we need new politicians? What's the next generation of politicians look like? Or is it going to continue on this stagnant way?
What we need and what we get are two different things. You know, because, I mean, you cannot go and replace all of those guys just because they don't have a vision. One thing I can tell you right now, that one of the most frustrating things was not that they had to work with Democrats or anything like that, or with Republicans and Democrats couldn't get along or whatever. This one not, it was sometimes frustrating, yes, but I mean, the most frustrating thing as far as I was concerned was that they had no vision. You know, I would go to them and I'd say, hey guys, let's go and rebuild California's infrastructure. It hasn't been done since the 60s. Let's build more roads and more university buildings and more schools. Let's fix our levees. You know, they are very vulnerable. If there's an earthquake, they will break and we will have floods everywhere and all this stuff. And I will be talking about them and they say, yeah. I remember Senator Parada said to me when we flew to Washington with my plane, he said, yeah, how about a $5 billion infrastructure package would be great. You're right. And I said, what is this $5 billion infrastructure? I said, we need $100 billion in California to have an impact on infrastructure. I said, let's go all out. So, you know, he says, oh, this will be unbelievable. You know, and then they negotiated, and then they came up with a $37 billion infrastructure package. So we did that, and then we did another $11 billion with the high-speed rail, and another $10 billion with building the prisons. So it was altogether around $60 billion we got out of them. But I mean, it was like the first thing in the vision was $5 billion. I said, Don, I said, this is like Mickey Mouse stuff. What do you want to do? You cannot even fix the roads up there in Oakland at your area for $5 billion. Let's go big. So they just don't have it. And there's a lot of those legislators have not traveled around the world. So when you say to them, I say, have you ever seen the on-ramps and the off-ramps and the double-decker freeways in South Korea and in Japan and in China? They look at you kind of with open eyes, kind of like, I've never been out of Bakersfield. You know, it's like, so, but that's the problem. That's the problem you have. They're not really visionaries. They They have no example of great visions or anything like that. So that's really the problem that you have. And this is also what we see here with the housing crisis. I mean, think about it, that we've known for the last 30 years that we're not building enough apartment buildings, right? And they just couldn't kind of like see the big picture, that if you go and you create an atmosphere, there's not enough apartments, then the apartments will rise in value. So now the average apartment is like $3,000 for one bedroom. Who can afford that? So people are depressed. They're working and they're working their ass off and they cannot afford an apartment. So now you have homeless. This whole thing in homeless is created by politicians, not by the private sector. The private sector is providing jobs, they are giving money and all that stuff, but they have created that by not giving you the permitting so that you can build the houses fast enough. So now they're short of 1 million homes, 1 million apartments. So the question is just, will they get their act together? But they're still dragging their feet now. I mean, they've spent now billions and billions of dollars on homeless issues, and they haven't solved it. They haven't even made a dent. The homeless crisis is getting worse by the day. So what is it? There's no vision. So this is what I'm talking about. So can we, because your question is, do we need a new type of leadership? Yes, we would. We would, but I mean, can it happen? You have to be realistic, because as Einstein said, the same brain that created the problem cannot solve it. So according to that rule, they would all have to go, and the new team would have to come in. And I have to say that in California, the sad story is that the Republicans are so bad, the Republican Party, that they cannot really be really great servants to the people. They always talk about their conservative nonsense, that is the kind of like they get stuck in their conservative corners, and so therefore there is no one getting elected to be up there and to run for governor or to run for lieutenant governor. So that's the real crisis that we have here. So it's all run by Democrats. And no matter who the party is, you cannot let one party run the whole thing, because that always goes south. It's never going to be successful. So this is the problems that we have to still deal with here.
But when you were a visionary when you were elected governor in your first term, and you had a plan, a cogent, sort of complete, fulsome plan to advance renewable energy as quickly as possible. But you had tremendous challenges. I mean, the state was on the brink of financial ruin, and you had significant opposition, much like what I believe is indicative of the federal situation in the United States, that we have so much, I would say, so much divide, if you will, and that is creating a significant inability to achieve the requisite objectives. For example, electric vehicles. Lithium's great, and that's California's, in Nevada, there's great opportunities there. But there's other critical non-substitutable inputs that are equally as important, such as graphite, let's say, natural or synthetic, cobalt that's being mitigated, but copper, nickel, et cetera. And the biggest challenge is people not appreciating the criticality of having a secure, complete supply chain in the United States for green energy, as perhaps a matter of not just energy security, but national security, one could argue, economic security. But my question is, how were you able to achieve what you did under such daunting circumstances, from the financial situation to your legislation?
Well, let's not forget the financial situation we got into, because we don't have any power over that. You know, we had gotten caught up with a worldwide recession, which is again created by government. You know, and as you can see right now, again, what is going on. I mean, the government creates this kind of a fake economy with 3% interest rates, and with you know, continuously running a deficit and running debt, continuing on with the debt. I mean, and they say the Democrats are the big spenders. So let's bring a Republican in. And then Trump comes in, and he goes and creates another $8 trillion debt. So then that the whole idea is out the window, right? That the Democrats are the big spenders, the Republicans are really the ones that save the day. So everything is a little bit confusing. But I mean, they created that mess that we were in 2008. And I called my friend Warren Buffett, and I said to him, I said, what do you think about that recession? And he said to me, Arnold, he says, this recession is like a deflated ball. I said, what do you mean? He says, well, that one is not going to bounce back that quickly. He says, you have to wait 5-6 years for that one to come back. And he was right. That's exactly what it took. And so, but it was beyond California. We cannot print more money. We cannot have a deficit. You know, we have to balance our books. And so this is the problem that we got stuck in. But it didn't really slow down our ability. It was more challenging, but it didn't slow us down when it comes to renewable energy and when it comes to, you know, fighting for lithium and fighting for, you know, clean cars. We created, as a matter of fact, exactly around that time, Tesla came to us and said, look, there's other states that are competing to have us there and to create a plant at this state. In Florida and Texas and Arizona and New York, New Jersey. And so I went quickly. After I talked to Elon Musk, I quickly went to the legislators, to the Democrats and Republicans, and I said, this guy is looking for a place for a plant and for making it his headquarters. I think California is the ideal place because we are this kind of a state, the futuristic state and the clean state. This place belongs here. And so I fought in Sacramento with both the Democrats and Republicans, and we found them a factory building, which was run by Toyota and owned by Toyota. They moved to Atlanta. We found them the place. We moved them in. We got them the money. We were able to compete against all the other states, got them enough money to get them started here. And so now this 1,400 workers didn't have to get laid off. As a matter of fact, by now, you know, this is now 15 years later, they have actually, we added to this 1,400 another few hundred. So this was the best thing, that we didn't have to ship workers out of state and this kind of jobs out of state. And we kept them here. And Tesla still has their headquarters here. They still are producing the cars there. So we are absolutely delighted. But so those are the kind of things that we did, even though there was a recession and even though we were in financial trouble and all of those kind of things. And we kept pushing to have electric cars drive on a diamond lane. So we got them special stickers so they can drive on a diamond lane, even with just one driver, one person in the car. So there was an extra incentive. So the key thing was incentives. And I think that's what we have to do. And I think the technology now with batteries is getting really so good. Now we are creating much better infrastructure so that the people can charge up their cars. They don't have any more excuses. Well, it would take me 3 hours to sit there. No, you can charge it up in a half an hour now, a car. So technologies have changed. Everything has changed now so much so that people really understand that batteries is the way to go. And it is also, when it comes to the spending, it's equal the amount of money that you spend on a battery-operated car versus gasoline. And you can see savings when you go and recharge the car. So there's all kinds of benefits, and we have now overcome the challenges that when it gets cold, that the batteries don't last as long, and blah, 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 and all this kind. All of this stuff, companies that have done it for the first time, like Ford and so, have now seen that those are the disadvantages and what do they need to do, and they found solutions for those problems. So I'm absolutely delighted of where we're going. And as you can see in China, they have now made huge progress with electric cars. So there's 20% electric cars now over there. So this is really huge. So we are seeing this phenomenon, not just in California. We're number one, of course, in California. But it will spread now all over the country, and it will spread worldwide. It's in Germany, I've seen it happening, in France, in England, and all those places.
I'm aware of the time, but this is a perfect final question for our audience. Kind of the mega trend, if you like, in our industry now is USA versus China. China's led ahead with battery production, electric cars, building all these critical mineral supply chains. The USA, Europe are all playing catch up. They're a decade behind at least. It's not an impossible task, but it's a challenging task. USA versus China and the geopolitics. What would President Schwarzenegger do with that relationship?
We're asking from the perspective of Chinese companies. We cannot meet the objectives in North America, the United States, stated objectives and mandated objectives because of batteries. They don't have the requisite sort of inputs to build the batteries. So there are some concerns that we need support. We need to have, let's say, the global dominant player, China, perhaps partner with a US company to set up a factory to build batteries and address America's needs and possibly export once America is satiated. But there is so much opposition under the pretext of sort of foreign adversarial legislation, stuff that is in the works, if you will, to preclude that. And I was just curious, to Simon's question, if you were president, what would your position, do you think, would likely be on that in sort of entertaining China as a partner?
I'm not an expert in that, the relationship with China and all this. I believe very strongly that the United States has the know-how and the money to go and build as many factories that we need to build batteries and to build everything that we need. It is just, where's the will and where's the vision? If you don't have the vision, then how is it going to happen? So you guys have to kind of single-handedly drive this and just go and hopefully have an impact on the politicians and lobby them strong enough and really get to them to get those things done, because you need the best way to get anything done is if you have the government and the private sector work together. Like we did when we worked with the private sector together when I was governor, and I even worked with Chevron. I had asked Chevron to build us the hydrogen highway. And imagine they opened up 25 now with this 40 gas stations where they took out the old tanks and put new tanks in there and put hydrogen in there. They didn't ask for anything in return because I asked them to. And so you can work with the oil companies, you can work with energy, you just cannot sell out. That is the key thing, and you have to have a vision. And I just feel like there is no vision in America right now, because otherwise, why would you spend so much money on liquid natural gas terminals in Europe right now? Billions of dollars go in there to build that. Is this the message of America, that we're building and spending that much money on liquid natural gas? You know what I'm saying? So it's confusing. When I go to Montana and visit my friends, I get sometimes stuck at the railroad. And I'm seeing this 200 cars going by. And I'm looking up there and I said, it seems to be coal. And my friend says, yeah, this goes to the west and then they ship it over to China. So America is saying basically, well, we don't want the pollution in our area here, but let's put it over there in China. But in the meantime, it's called global pollution, global climate change, global. There is no such thing as a border that stops the pollution. So there is no vision. How can you ship the coal to China and say, you pollute your place so we can put the finger on you? So it's all about vision. You know, it's like, you know, we are producing more oil than ever before now. We're doing more drilling than ever before. So all of this stuff is happening while we're supposed and while we've made promises that we're going to get off fossil fuel, which we have to. You know, so instead of just saying, okay, let's be realistic and build nuclear power plants, and luckily in California, they kept our nuclear power plant rather than closing it down, because it produces 10% of energy, clean energy. That's what we want. You know, my first choice is always renewable energy, but since we are not fast enough in producing that, we have to go also think about the nuclear energy. And Europe should think about it too, because they shouldn't close every nuclear plant and then build one in Poland. And then the Germans tap into the Polish nuclear plant and say, oh, we are not building any nuclear, we don't believe in nuclear. So it's stupidity to the highest level,
That's what,
right?
I think most politicians don't understand that nothing's binary. It's not all electric vehicles or ice engines or nuclear or wind or solar. It's a matrix. And I think that what you remind me very much of sort of Senator Joe Manchin in terms of his philosophy. You know, it comes from an energy state, of course, but he understands that in order for America to be robust economically, it requires cheap energy. And you have to have a multitude of sources, that diversification, so you're not sort of sole source contingent. But say that, you know, I believe Joe Manchin shares a lot of your perspectives on the need to have some sort of diversity in the energy sources. But even if you have that vision and a plan, how do you overcome such almost toxic divisiveness at the federal level? Meaning
Well,
it's,
like I said, when I went there and I talked to the Republican congressional leaders about creating 100% more renewables, going from 20 to 40%, and creating 100% more nuclear energy, going from 20 to 40%, they did not object. They loved the idea. And then when I went to the White House, it was the same thing. They said, yeah, I think there's a deal there. But I haven't seen them talking about it and get together on this, because they're fighting over the budget and who should be the speaker and to derail Kevin McCarthy for no reason and all of those kind of things. That's what they get caught up in. And to me, I think the future of our energy is more important than to talk about, should trans have a bathroom? This is like a bullshit conversation to me, and it doesn't move the country forward. What moves the country forward, if we really have a specific goal of how are we going to go and create 100% of clean energy. And here's a way, what I proposed was a way to go forward. Manchin is a great guy, he's a great leader, but he's also very heavily stuck on coal because he comes from a coal state. And so his decisions, and that's the dilemma about being a Democrat, because the Democrats sell themselves always as being like clean, and they're being, for renewable energy and for, climate change and all this stuff. And then comes the Manchin along that says, well, it sounds so good, but I'm selling coal because I'm in a coal state, in oil and stuff like that. So, but I think that he would go for the alternative. But in the meantime, because I talked to him about it, in the meantime, he says, we got to go with coal and oil and it'll be half the alternative. I said, yeah, but you have to be willing to push the alternative. I said, Joe, you can't just drag your feet on that one. So anyway, we had this conversation. I think that he could be a great leader. There's no two ways about it if he changes some of his positions there. Yeah, absolutely. But anyway, you guys just keep up your work. And, I'm with you 100% because this is the only way to go, is to go the renewable route and to go with the lithium-ion batteries to solve the problems, to have all of the cars have enough batteries so no one can come and say, well, there's not enough lithium around, there's not enough those minerals. We have all the minerals. We have all the minerals, we figured it out, and luckily there's people that are experts there and know how to do that. And, so that's why I'm like 100% behind what you're doing, and I will be there all the way to the end, okay? And this is as far as I'm concerned. As I said earlier, I don't clock in, I don't clock out. For me, it continues on, and I will be talking about the healthy body and the healthy earth until I die. That's as simple as that.
Arnold, this has been special. We appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thank you.